Hi everyone. I'm just going to talk through some Zoom things, some settings. Basically, I have shared the Zoom tutorial links, but I thought I'd just point out some important settings and where you go for certain things, just based on my own practices. So you get a personal meeting room, but you can also schedule meetings. All right, and these will have different links. So if I'm using my personal meeting room, I will use this link over there. So that is the one that I will share with people to join a meeting. Okay, so when you log into Zoom, your profile might look similar, and that your number over here is going to look a little bit different. Okay, so I will admit that initially I thought this number was the one to use and thought, why is it not working? Okay, that's because we need to use this one, the one that starts with zoom.us. All right, so with a licensed account, you've got a meeting capacity of 300. Doesn't mean it's always good practice to have a meeting with 300 people, especially in the case of large undergraduate, first year classes. It might be a bit overwhelming for folks, I think. And also, I think the older students generally are a little bit more savvy. Okay, so that's my profile. Now, other times I might want to schedule a meeting for a particular time. Then I will go into meetings and I can say host a meeting, or I can say schedule a new meeting. And that's where I will set up a particular, give it a topic. Like maybe I should have done one for the Are You Teaching Online on webinars. So I would say, Are you teaching online? Give it a title. You don't have to put in a description. You can decide, is this something that is only going to happen at a particular time, and then you want the meeting room to close, or do you want it to be a recurring meeting? So something you're going to use again. So for example, perhaps I have a meeting room that's just for supervision. Then I might want it to be a recurring meeting and tick this option. And I can select no fixed time. Okay. And then do you want it to generate a new meeting URL, or do you want it to be your personal meeting room URL? Okay, so you can decide. Then I generally untick password. I don't mind folks having their videos on, or myself, because you can always mute it. So for example, if people enter a meeting, you could always, if you notice that the bandwidth's not so great and the audio is breaking up, you're going to say, okay, folks, we're muting everyone's video to conserve bandwidth, so that we can at least still hear everyone talking. Okay. For audio, you select computer audio. Telephone is only for the US. Okay. So we want computer audio. Then you have various meeting options. Do you want to enable people to be able to join before the host? Or do you want to have to click every time to allow someone in? All right, that's why, I just find it easier for folks to enable, be able to join before I do, because you'll always get early birds. Then, do you want to mute people when they enter? So in a meeting, you can always mute folks as you go along if their mics are making noise. Okay, I untick only authenticated users can join because very often it is people from outside. Now this is quite important. So record the meeting automatically. So this means that when the meeting starts, a recording will start. You can stop it during the meeting or pause, or you can decide you're rather going to disable this and first ask people and say, is it all right if I record this meeting? And then you click record. Okay. Now these options are for where that recording goes. So do you want it to live on your local computer? So just basically it prompts you to, it processes and downloads a recording of that meeting. Or do you want it to be in the cloud? So when it is in the cloud, you can access it via recordings at the top right over here. Okay. You can also invite alternative hosts. And this is something that we have been encouraging colleagues to use. So because we have limited licenses, so say the main lecturer can have a licensed account and then set up various rooms, and then you can add people as alternative hosts. So say, for example, you've got a postgrad student who's going to be helping you to facilitate, collect questions, and perhaps, mute mics, that kind of thing. And I'd really, really recommend you, especially initially, rather not hosting a meeting solely on your own. It's really good to have support and, decide, okay, what's the lead facilitator going to do? Present, obviously, or perhaps just, and what's the supports facilitator going to do? So going back to the idea of sharing accounts, so this is where you would put people's emails in, but they do need to be basic users first. So you just send us an email and we can create basic accounts for those folks. We have unlimited basic accounts. But licensed users, the only difference really is that licensed users get accounts that enable them to host a meeting for longer than 45 minutes. Okay, so that's where you schedule a meeting, and let's say I'm happy, I can click save. And then it looks like this. And it's given me this unique new URL. And I can actually copy this invitation and put it into people's email address. Okay, and you can edit it or you can start the meeting right away. Okay, so those are, I think, some of the important tabs. Profile meetings, webinars, I don't think you're really going to worry with. Recordings is an important one. So cloud recordings, because I selected cloud recordings, you can see the workshop that we had started at 1 o'clock. This is the meeting room recording for that one. There were 2 files. So if I click the meeting room, we can see what files they were. So I've selected in my settings to always record, keep a copy of the chat file and then shared screen with speaker view. All right. But say you want to share the copy of the recording, you can click copy shareable link. So example of this is on our RU Teaching Online site, where recordings of webinars, this one takes you to a recording that will look like this. And folks can revisit it. And it's always useful to share a recording. because you might have someone that loses connection and then, or have to, maybe they've got something pressing in their physical space that they actually need to attend to, so they've got to step out of the online meeting. And yeah, so they can come here and revisit it. Okay, now I know a lot of folks are using using Zoom to supervise postgrads. So just a tip I thought I'd share is that I create a folder. I call it supervision, and I actually have a folder within that for each student. And they've got access to it. They can upload things. I share sometimes interesting readings, but I also share copies of Zoom recordings. Our meeting chat logs with links. So sometimes I say, oh, have you had a look at this article? And the link's in the chat. Okay, and then I date it, and I say how big the file is to download. So I think back to when I was a PhD student. I luckily, towards the end, actually started audio recording my supervisor because I couldn't take notes of everything. But you can imagine how helpful this is to postgrad students. Even if you don't do, a folder, at least, after you've met, perhaps you email them and share a copy of the link to the recording with them. Okay. Settings. I'm just going to point out some of the important ones, because there are loads of settings, and I think a lot of them, if you read through them, it's quite self-explanatory. The one that you might find quite irritating at first is the little bell when someone joins. So let's look at where you can put that off. Here, play sound when participants leave, join, or leave. So you may have noticed that in the recording, or if you joined online for the first workshop that we had. So I decided, okay, that was quite distracting, so let's put it off for our next one. Okay, so that's where you put it on or off. Okay, so play sound, no, we don't want that. So there are also other tools you can use. Perhaps you want to use polls within a meeting. Something that I've started using recently, which is actually an advanced feature, and you might want to look into. You do need to deselect remote support, though, to enable a breakout room. So breakout rooms allow the host to split participants into smaller little rooms, and you specify, say you have 3 rooms, and say there are 15 students, you can actually assign, and you can do it manually, or you can randomly assign people to 3 groups. Maybe you want them to discuss something, and rather than having 15 people talk and report back, you can have 1 person from each group. Okay, so you give them a process and you say, okay, for the next 10 minutes, you are now going to break out into breakout rooms, and I'd like you to discuss this and this between yourselves for the next 10 minutes, and then please select, choose someone to report back. So that's something we used recently that really worked quite nicely, and everyone got to say something. I think it's something that, depending on the sort of engagement that you're planning, because you are teaching an online class, and how do you think people might learn best? If you want people to share things and be able to talk, and for everyone to have a voice in the space beyond exchanging text, in the chat, then you may want to consider breakout rooms. All right. So those are some cool things that, you can, especially, thinking about supervising postgrad students. But let's say you have a guest speaker and perhaps you're using your personal meeting room. They can just go, if they've used Zoom before, they might be familiar with it. But all you will need to do is to upgrade them. They do not need to have a Zoom account. Same with any postgrad students. They don't need a Zoom account. Okay, so if your settings are set up as I've shown you, then you should be fine. Okay. So the only thing is, but you get a bit of a hierarchy. You have hosts and you'll have co-hosts. So co-hosts can mute people and so forth. And it's useful for if you have a co-facilitator to be your co-host. So you can upgrade people once you're in the meeting room if you haven't assigned them co-host privileges already. So that I can do. You can't do it in your personal meeting room, but you can do it in meetings that you create. So let's say that one. Let's go to this one, and we want to edit this meeting. So we go to the bottom, edit this meeting, and this is where you assign, just a reminder, alternative hosts. All right. So it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. It's really good if you are able to sort of participate in some Zoom meetings, even if it's just our RU teaching online ones, and get a feel for it. What does it feel like to be in the space, and what do you need to take account of if you're going to be facilitating a session like this? For example, let's say you are presenting and you find it distracting to attend to questions that pop up in the chat. Your co-facilitator could actually, say, okay, one of your tasks, please collect any questions or alert me to a question, and I'll respond. Okay. All right, so best of luck and happy Zooming.